we need to bring much more awareness to the effect of ageism, and certainly gendered ageism, on professional women. It's a reality, and it affects our financial security, our job status. And right now it's under the radar. A lot of companies aren't including ageism, and certainly not gendered ageism, in any of their unconscious bias programs or DEI initiatives.
The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization Show, the home of Googlization Nation, where we talk with HR and business thought leaders about the crazy shift going on in the world of business, technology, and HR. Here's your host, Ira Wolf, and co-host, Joyce Joya.
Hello, Googlization Nation, and welcome back to the Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization Show. I'm going for my own words there. Hello, Joyce. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Ira. Thanks for everything.
Things in the, well, you're not in the Midwest, but I guess the Southeast, right? or Southern.
I'm in the
between.
Yeah, I think Austin is, actually Austin's considered Southwest, but I never thought of it as being, because it is in the Central Time Zone after all.
Right. Yeah, the time zones are a little strange sometimes. And then especially when some states don't change at all.
Oh, now that's another matter. That's another matter of great frustration.
That's another show. Well, we've got a great lineup today, and really excited. We're going from the West Coast all the way to India. So the West Coast of the U.S. and all the way to India. Our first guest today is going to be Bonnie Marcus. And Bonnie's got a new book out called Not Done Yet about, and the focus of that is about gendered ageism, women over 50, how they can claim their role in leadership. And then our second guest is Professor M.S. Rao, who I met through the Thinkers 360. He's actually the #1 global thought leader in culture and leadership. And we'll be talking with him. Again, he's got a book about women in leadership. He talks about soft leadership, which is something that we'll explore and resonate there. So he'll be joining us for the second segment.
And he has a new book as well.
Yes. Yeah, he's quite prolific, even more so than you and I. So he puts out a lot of content. Just to put this in the framework, I was doing a little research in the back end, and again, just this morning, I don't remember if it was a text or an email, but Time, I think just yesterday came out with their 100 most influential companies. It's a new list. I didn't even know Time was still around, actually, but it's talking about change.
Of course, it's still around.
Yeah, talking about change. Well, Newsweek's around, but not the way it used to be.
That's
true. Time just released their 100 most influential companies, and the cover was Mary Barra from General Motors. So that fit into our topic so well here, and then it took me to, I wonder what's the current status on that, of how many female CEOs, women CEOs, are there in the top 500 companies, and it increased a lot last year. Clorox, I remember last year at this time I was listening to the CEO of Clorox, and then 2 months later he resigned. He talked about
I think actually it went from 5% to 7.4%.
It's over 8%. It was 8.2% currently.
Oh, wow.
It was quite a few. Yeah, it wasn't 5. I think it was 6 at the end of 2019 or somewhere in 2020. And then it was actually, if you read the end of 2020, it was in the 7s. And then in the first quarter of this year, there were some new people. So then I went down and then I pulled it up, and I think there's 41 women now I started to look and see how many women were over 50. And the majority were, but there were a few under 50. The number of women in the C-suite is 21%, which is quite a gap between 50% of the population and 21% in senior leadership. So a lot of work to be done there. Also interesting, and I don't know, we've talked about this on some of the other shows. Out of those 41 women who were in the CEO roles, there's only 3 women of color. So,
we have some work to do in that regard.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to do. So really excited about having Bonnie and Professor Rao here to be able to talk about that. And again, continuing the theme, I know still last month in March.
Diversity.
With women,
so important.
International Month and so forth. So we're continuing that path. Before we get there, we're certainly talking a lot about adaptability. And on May 20th, I'll be having another webinar on adaptability. And Roxy, you'll put the link up there, but you can go to bit.ly/AQAI 520. And we're going to be talking about the role of adaptability. And again, adaptability, it's not just about how do you become more innovative. It's not just for how do we become more tech savvy. In order to become more diverse, to have this conversation, how do we become more open? How do we have a conversation about diversity, inclusion, equity, emotional intelligence, empathy? You can't do any of that if you're not more adaptable. So this is a skill that will go in many different directions. So hopefully you'll join us there. You'll hear a lot more about that. And we want to thank Ngomu again for being our sponsor, as well as Success Performance Solutions. Joyce, anything I missed on that?
I think you hit all the bases, and it's time to introduce Bonnie.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bonnie's got a new book called Not Done Yet. So I love that title.
Me too.
That's so appropriate for so many other conversations that we've had.
Right.
I think what we've decided at the end of the show is that we're just getting started, and that maybe that's there's a book title in there or something else. But her new book is Not Done Yet, and it's focused on women over 50, but it goes much beyond that. So we want to welcome Bonnie Marcus to the show.
And Bonnie, would you start by telling us what the subtitle is for that book? Because I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, so it is not done yet, exclamation point.
I forgot the exclamation point, sorry.
How women over 50 regain their confidence and claim workplace power.
So from a man, so as the on this platform, let's talk about that, about reclaiming your confidence and being able to regain and to gain the power that, again, deserved. I mean, it goes back to the whole thing of not seeing color, not seeing gender, and that's BS, because obviously a lot of people saw that before. And how do we, and looking for ways that we can turn it. We're making incremental steps, but we need to go faster.
Yeah, I think that we need to bring much more awareness to the effect of ageism, and certainly gendered ageism, on professional women. It's a reality, and it affects our financial security, our job status. And right now it's under the radar. A lot of companies aren't including ageism, and certainly not gendered ageism, in any of their unconscious bias programs or DEI initiatives.
And that's a mistake. That's a big mistake, I think.
Ageism is something we all have in common. And, if we're lucky, we're going to age in the workplace and continue to add value. But it isn't talked about at all as one of the isms. It's the only ism, I think, right now that's under the radar.
Well, the reason I think it's such a big mistake is that the older women who are still in the workforce feel a high sense of responsibility that they want to keep contributing. And when they're pushed out, which happens too often, the company is really losing out. the company is losing all that intellectual capital, all that mentoring capacity. It's losing a lot. So,
yeah, I'm sorry.
no. I was just going to say, so what do we need to do to encourage women to stay strong and to step into their power and to see who they really are?
Well, the first thing we need to do is self-reflect and understand the way we may be holding ourselves back and keeping small because of the ageist assumptions and stereotypes that we have internalized. So the one thing that we can control certainly is our mindset. And we could take a really good hard look at some of the limiting beliefs that we hold that are sabotaging our careers and our success. So for instance, if we believe we're too old to get promoted, and if we believe we're too old to even ask for a raise, then we're going to hesitate. We're not going to do the things we need to do to make that happen. We're not going to voice our opinion, and we're not going to raise our hand. We're not going to be visible in the workplace. We're going to pull away and kind of hide. And so when we sideline ourselves, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where we're not going to get promoted and we're not going to get the raise because we're kind of in the shadows. So that's the first thing that we really need to do. The other, and that's the whole first section of the book, is really identifying what these beliefs are that may be sabotaging you. And I have to say, when I'm writing this book, I realize I'm ageist just like everybody else, and somebody would say, "Oh, Bonnie, you look really great for your age." And I was like, "Oh yeah," I take it as a compliment. I realize, wow, that's really ageist. So, I mean, we really need to do that because it's powerful. These beliefs are powerful and they can really hold us back. And then
Bonnie, can I ask you a question before we get too far? What are some of those beliefs? What are some of the beliefs that get in the way of people making that change? Because I'm also thinking, and this is probably another question, is people are trying to get back in the workforce. They want a job, but they're 54 years old and they're trying to re-enter it. How do they develop that confidence to ask for what they deserve rather than saying, if I ask for what I should get, I may not get the job?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought that up because, over 5 million women lost their jobs or left the workforce due to the pandemic. And the research shows that if you're between the age of 50 and 61, you're 18% less likely to get rehired. And if you're over 60, it's 50% less likely to get.
Is that just for women or is that for men and women?
Women.
That's women. I don't know what the stats are for everyone.
Because I can tell you and again, I don't want to say I don't believe in the ageism because it's there. I just personally haven't seen it because I don't hang in that space and I'm not, necessarily looking. But I hear it from a lot of men. I mean, and maybe it's my connections and it's the LinkedIn conversations I have, but ageism is rampant. And it would be interesting to see that difference between men and women if those percentages are there. But there's a lot of men that are feeling that impact as well. Yeah,
but I mean, here's the thing, Ira. Women are subjected to ageism earlier than men because of the emphasis on our appearance. Our looks and youthfulness. And so as we show visible signs of aging, all of a sudden we are looked as less competent, less relevant, less valuable. And that's based on the way we show up, the way we look.
So that seems almost that combination. Yeah, it seems that's a combination though. There's ageism and there's genderism. And then you combine those, so it's almost 1 and 1 equals 3.
That's why I wrote the book. Our whole lot as professional women, we have faced gender bias in some way, shape, or form, our entire career. Earlier in my career, when I started in the late 80s, it was really overt. We were subjected to, sexual harassment, sexism, certainly. And gender bias was really out there. Now it's much more subtle. However, as we age, now we have that combination where we still aren't paid equally. We still don't get equal opportunities for advancement and sponsorship. And now that we're showing visible signs of aging, we're viewed as less than, not as valuable. So it's that combo that is really dangerous.
And by the way, the US is actually ahead of some areas in South America, because if you're over the age of 40 in South America, you are considered over the hill. Whether you're a man or a woman, doesn't matter. And I hope that that's changing now. But I mean, ageism is everywhere in the world, sadly.
Everywhere. And there's some recent research that shows that it is more prevalent depending on where you live. And of course, the United States is way up there compared to Europe and UK, which is also shows a lot of ageism. The United States, and again, depending on where you live in the United States, if you live in the Northeast, there's more ageism around New York, New Jersey, and then in Florida. I live in California, and I can't believe California isn't the top of the list, but it wasn't.
So before we get too far along, because I definitely want you to cover this, what are some of the career action planning tips that you give in your book that you could share with our audience?
Well, the tips that I give in the book are career tips that you should follow your entire career. So I really want to emphasize how important it is to be proactive with these tips and strategies now that you're more vulnerable and you're reaching 50 and beyond. So we need to be more vigilant and aware of the gendered ageism on the horizon. But some of these tips might include being strategic about your career. So really developing a plan of what is your career goal? How do you want to add value in your career going forward? And then put a plan in place, put a strategic network in place. Who do you know and who do you need to know? And how will those people support you? Develop allies, develop champions. It's really important to understand what your value proposition is. How does your work lead to positive business outcomes? And then you can see opportunities for how you can help your manager, your team, your company reach their objectives. And it helps you to build influence. And then another tip would be to really be politically savvy. Pay attention to what's going on around you. A career certainly isn't built in a vacuum. And it's important to really take note of what the political landscape is, especially for a woman, especially for an older woman. So who can be your allies and champions? Who can vouch for you when you're not in the room? What does it take for a woman to keep her status, to be visible, to show her relevance, and make note of all that?
Wow. Great advice. Thank you.
I know we started on that track, and I'm not sure we actually answered it, but I'm still curious. What are some of the beliefs that get in the way? What are some of the origins of that? Okay,
so one belief is that I need to look young and attractive to be successful. Another one might be.
So is that so? Again, from my side, just so I'm not, I don't perpetuate this ageism and genderism. It sounds like that should be more my advice to the to the other person, not to look at somebody's appearance and their age, rather than, how do you dress the part to fit my bias? How do we help change the world's bias that, men shouldn't be looking at, young blondes?
I think that really what I try to emphasize in the book, I mean, I want to bring awareness around this issue, certainly. And that's one of the major reasons why I wrote this book, as well as giving women the tools and the voice to deal with this. But we can only control our own attitude and our own mindset. And we hold ourselves back in ways that really affect our success, as I said earlier. So, for instance, if we believe the only way we're going to succeed is if we look young, then we are probably going to hide. I interviewed a lot of women who won't go to work on their birthdays. They don't want to bring attention to their age. They don't want anybody to say, "Oh, how old are you this year?" You're like, but when we pull ourselves out of the mainstream in any way, shape, or form at work, and we are less visible, we actually become invisible. And so those women that I interviewed, a lot of the women felt tremendous pressure to modify their appearance. I interviewed a woman who said she was in commercial real estate. She knew she needed eye lift surgery, and that was her investment. She could work for the next 10 years if she invested in that surgery. And other women who said they had, Botox and filler just to keep their jobs. So there is a lot of pressure and focus on that. Another belief, as I talked about earlier, may be that I'm too old to compete. I'm too old to get the promotion. And again, what is the effect of that? Is that you don't do the kinds of things that you need to do to stay marketable, to really be visible and credible in the workplace. So these are examples of kinds of things that we have absorbed. Another one may be that I'm irrelevant. I have nothing of value to offer. And so then you don't raise your hand. You don't offer your opinion. And that's not going to help you.
It sounds like, and again, not to give it another name, but I mean, it sounds like imposter syndrome, which has come out, in a lot of roles. We hear the same thing when we were talking about just in general DEI, diversity and inclusion. Then imposter syndrome is certainly plays into that, and it becomes self-awareness and self-confidence, which is how you started. It's increasing the awareness, and how do you build your self-confidence?
Well, and imposter syndrome is not exclusive to women either.
No, not at all. But it's now becoming acceptable to understand what imposter syndrome is, because there's a lot of qualified people, but again, it's one of the reasons that people haven't stuck up for themselves in the past.
True, and usually the imposter syndrome is more prevalent with high achieving people, men and women. So if you are more ambitious and career minded, you tend to fall into the imposter syndrome more than others.
So after people read your book, they should pick up. So you should look at Mindset by Carol Dweck, talking about growth mindset.
I talk about her, and I have a chapter on cultivating your growth mindset and how important it is, because there's all these myths, I should say, or beliefs that we are in cognitive decline after 50, that we can't learn new skills, that that we aren't good at technology. There's actually specific research that shows that isn't necessarily true. So it's really important to stay open and keep that growth mindset and be curious. And there's so many ways that we can learn new things these days. We have, shows like yours and podcasts and online courses and books. I mean, there's just so many avenues. And I talk about how important it is to, first of all, stay up to date with your current skills and what's needed for your current position, but also to do research about your industry trends, see what new skills may be coming down the pike, and sign up for courses and learn those skills so you can be at the forefront and you can actually be in the position where you can mentor or train others. And that shows your credibility, certainly, and your relevance.
So, Bonnie, if I were to extrapolate what you just said, because my next question was, what advice do you have for HR professionals to support women to own their own power? What you would recommend then, which is what you've just said, is to encourage them to take courses, encourage them to keep growing, find ways for them to contribute in meaningful ways to the organization. Is that what you would?
I mean, that's one thing. I would certainly encourage HR professionals to spotlight senior women. I mean, maybe it's a quarterly newsletter where they focus on a woman and her achievements or acknowledgments. So not only is she visible, but she gains respect because of what she has done for the company or what she has achieved. I mean, just even doing that would bring some kind of recognition to women 50 plus. And also starting cross-generational networking programs, facilitating cross-generational networking programs and mentorship.
I like that one, the cross-generational program, networking programs. And that sounds like a real winner to me.
We put people in categories based on age, based on gender, sexual orientation, race, all that. Then we make assumptions about them. So if we're boomers, we make assumptions about millennials. If we're millennials, we make assumptions about boomer. And we don't really get to know these people. We put up barriers. So if HR can facilitate intergenerational discussions and conversations and networking, and people get to know each other one-on-one, they understand the value they can bring to each other. We can learn from other generations.
Boy, that makes a lot of sense to me. How can listeners buy your book, Not Done Yet?
They can buy it wherever they buy their books. It's on all book outlets, Amazon, certainly, Barnes & Noble, Porchlight. It should be in your independent bookstore if you want to support independent bookstores as well.
And your website is bonniemarcusleadership.com. Is that correct?
That's correct. There it is.
And I know we can get a hold of you on LinkedIn and other social media as well. So, I got one final question. I haven't asked this. I'm not sure, Joyce. I've asked this on as long as you've been co-hosting, but it's if you're on the show a year from now, Bonnie, 12 months from now, what does that look like? What are we going to be talking about 12 months from now?
We're going to be talking about what companies can do to address gendered ageism. We're going to be talking about how companies are recognizing the importance and are designing programs. And that's what my hope is for a year from now.
Woohoo! I love it. I love it.
So the goal is we need to get a lot of people, especially males, executives, to read your new book, Not Done Yet, to increase their awareness. And hopefully next year we'll be able to take some action on that. So, Bonnie, it's been great. Thank you very much. Thanks for leading the cause. It's the timing is right. We were at a tipping point, And we're coming to the hard truths that there's been a lot of discrimination and biases that we've held, but accepted as normal. And as a male, an older male white boomer, I've learned a tremendous amount over the last year of things that I thought I was open-minded and fair and equitable. And it's like, a lot to learn. So even you can teach an old dog new tricks. So appreciate it.
Bonnie. It was great to have you on.
Oh, Joyce and Ira, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Okay. Thank you. Take care. Stay safe. Excellent segment. A lot of good things. The one thing that I didn't mention, I mentioned out of those 41 women CEOs out of 500, 3 women of color. If you looked back 20 years, which is not that long ago, there was 2 women. Zero women of color. 2 out of 500. So there has been progress, and I think that's the challenge. People look at that and say, wow, look at all the progress we've made.
Right. And yet,
we're still at 8%. You got 50% of the population is women, and you got 8%, are in a senior leadership role. But we're getting there. We're going to continue this theme in our second segment with Professor M.S. Rao coming from India. So that should be very interesting to pick up on that. We want to thank everyone for listening to Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization. You're going to hear from our sponsors right now, Ngomu and Success Performance Solutions. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Imagine growing great employees and advancing emerging leaders for less than $1 a day. The Ngomu app will support your employees in a myriad of ways, from career and personal development to health and wellness. No need to schedule and hold trainings. Just have them access over 90 coaches for live virtual group and one-on-one coaching for whatever topic they need or want to work on. Anytime, anywhere. Learn more at ngomu.com today.
For many people, the bridge to the new normal is too far, too difficult, too scary. Waiting to get back to normal becomes a way of life, filled with fear and despair. But wait, why are those people who dare to travel to the new normal celebrating? Opportunity and growth? How can you get a piece of the action? The bridge between the past and the future, the status quo and the new normal is adaptability. You have a choice. Which side of the future do you want to land on? Will it be coping and surviving or growing and thriving? Adaptability quotient is the new competitive edge.
Hey, welcome back, Googlization Nation, and welcome back to the Googlization Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization show. We just had a wonderful conversation with Bonnie Marcus, talking about Not Done Yet, her new book about genderized, is it gender
ageism.
Gendered ageism.
And by the way, it's interesting, Ira. My kids have often said, Mom, when do you expect to retire? And my response is always, not done yet.
Yeah, it's funny. I just had that question from a stepson the other night. We were at a party, and we were over at the house, not at a party, but we were over at the house. And he said, so when are you going to retire? When are you going to come out? He calls it the pit. My office is in the basement. So he said, when are you going to come out of the pit? And I go, I'm going to retire when I retire. We're going to keep on going. So we're going to continue the theme. And there were so many opportunities there. I didn't want to kind of jump in, but we've got the webinar coming up in a couple of weeks on adaptability. And as we're talking about how do we improve self-awareness, growth mindset, being able to juggle all these, as I'm thinking is if we've got instances of, the whole the racial diversity, and then we got ageism, and then we got genderism. We have all these things going on, and, certainly trying not to walk on eggshells, trying to be open, trying not to offend other people. We've all got a lot to learn, and the only way that we're going to be able to do that is through learning how to become more adaptable, more open-minded. So hopefully you'll check the webinar out and join us. But right now, We've got a gentleman that I've been trying to meet, that I'm happy to meet. I've been chasing his tail. He on Thinkers 360. He's number one on a couple lists: global thought leader, leadership, culture. There's a few other ones, but we're just like Tom Hake, who we talked to a few weeks ago, and a couple other, and Bill Jensen is part of 360. We're all sort of in that. So the opportunity to meet a number of incredible people. So really excited to bring on Professor M.S. Rao.
And just as an aside, Ira, I asked him, what do people call you? And he said, Professor Rao.
Yeah. And there is Professor Rao. Hello.
Welcome, Professor Rao. Good evening to you, sir, in New Delhi.
Thank you for having me on your show. And hello, listeners. Greetings from India.
Yeah, and thank you for being here. So I don't know if you heard any of the conversation we just had, but we were talking about gendered ageism. We were talking about women in leadership roles over the age of 50. And I know you've written about leadership even more than probably Joyce and I combined. I think you're quite prolfic.
I think so.
Out there. So let's talk about that a little bit. Are you seeing different? Well, let's start with this question. You talk about you call yourself the father of soft leadership. What is soft leadership?
Soft leadership is leading people through soft skills. I earned my PhD in soft skills in the year 2011. And I have blended soft skills with leadership because I'm passionate about leadership. I served in the Indian Air Force. And why I had to coin this new leadership perspective is that whenever I conducted training programs around 10 years ago, so audiences complained that they were not happy with the prevailing leadership styles. Then I thought there was a gap. So since I'm a passionate researcher, so I wanted to fill the gap. So I did research and published several research papers in the various international journals, including Leader to Leader, Emerald, and I have written 6 books on soft leadership. And the recent book is Soft Leadership, A New Direction to Leadership, which I have dedicated to the father of modern management, Peter Drucker, and father of modern marketing, Philip Kotler, has written a foreword. And another thing is that the father of HR, Dave Ulrich, who is my best friend, has provided leadership code. I'll show you the book so that you have an idea. One book I'll show you. This is the book on soft leadership. My friend Dave Ulrich has written. And I have written so many books on soft leadership. And this is another book on soft leadership. Dennis Carey has written a foreword. So I have so many books, so I don't want to confuse the audiences with so many books. And this is the latest book, Strategies to Build Women Leaders Globally. And our Indian Vice President, Mr. M. Venkaiah Naidu, has written a foreword. And I have dedicated this book to Rosa Parks, Maya Angelou, and Oprah Winfrey.
Yes, Professor, you dedicated that book to Rosa Parks, Oprah Winfrey, and Maya Angelou. How did you choose those 3 women?
I like Rosa Parks because she refused to give the seat when in the bus when she was traveling. She was asked to vacate. She refused to give her seat. That led to movement, and subsequently Martin Luther King started the movement, and that changed the world. That's one. And I admire Maya Angelou because my life is also full of sufferings and struggles. So I have dedicated. And I also admire Oprah Winfrey. So that is the reason why I have dedicated this book to 3 women leaders, because this is about women leaders. So I decided to dedicate to women leaders. And it's a coincidence that all are women of color.
How would you characterize the difference between men's leadership style and women's leadership styles?
The thing is, men and women, biologically, they are different. When the question of making decisions, women are more mature, cool-headed, and they make better decisions than men. Sometimes men may take a bit harsh decisions. They may take aggressive decisions. So that is one of the reasons between the men leaders and women leaders.
So, I think you've talked about this, again, with the soft side. We're seeing a lot more. Almost every conversation we have these days talks about empathy. And I think just from a hard wiring, whether that's, and maybe we're being biased in that sense that men aren't more empathetic, but probably not. That they're, or at least that men don't know how to communicate empathy as well as a woman. But that's even playing into emotional intelligence. So a lot of the themes we're hearing about diversity and inclusion, better communication, collaboration, innovation, open-mindedness, adaptability, those all, certainly align under soft skills. But it seems that women are more, maybe not hardwired for it, but they're definitely better at delivering it.
See, as you said, women are more empathetic. That's one thing, and they are more collaborative. Unlike men who often compete, they don't collaborate. That's one thing. And women can multitask, which men can't multitask. So there are some basic differences between men and women. So I wanted to highlight women empowerment because I have signed up for a hashtag he or she, advocate gender equality globally. So I started writing research papers on women leadership, and I have published even research papers on women leadership. Then I thought, why not to write a book on women leadership to encourage women? Because the world cannot, a bird cannot fly with one wing. A bird needs two wings to fly. If the society has to grow, both men and women have to work together. If women also collaborate and work with men, so we'll be able to build a better world. So what we need to do is that men should have a shift in the mindset towards women, and they should handhold women, and instead of going with the superiority complex, they should empathize with women, and they should collaborate with women so that organizationally we can improve productivity and performance, and nations also can achieve peace and prosperity.
Professor, what do you think companies should be doing to encourage more women to move into leadership roles?
See, the challenge is that there's a glass ceiling which is still hidden. So women are not being promoted. It is still prevalent. So that glass ceiling has to be broken. So when I wrote this book, I think I have written this book 3 years back. Women have less number. There are a very less number of women CEOs. I thought there would be more number of women CEOs within a short span, but which didn't happen. That means still there is some glass ceiling that is preventing women to take up leadership roles and responsibilities.
So, Professor, what are you seeing a difference? I mean, we're obviously almost halfway across the world from you. Are you seeing a difference internationally? Are you seeing a difference in Asia or Europe in women leadership? Or, this is obviously universal, but does it seem to be, is the West and especially the U.S. a little bit behind, ahead? Or maybe in the terms you just talked about, is the glass ceiling thicker in the U.S. or in India or in Asia or in Europe?
glass ceiling is prevalent across the world, but it is prevalent more in Indian context. Because if you look at the women CEOs, there are very few women CEOs like Kiran Majumdar-Shah, Biocon CEO. Earlier we had Indira Nooyi, and she left. So now the thing is that this is a global challenge, this glass ceiling, but it's more or less similar across various nations.
We really appreciate you being here. We've got to kind of wrap up here. We're almost at the end of the show. How can people get a hold of you? How can they purchase your books? What's your website?
If people type on search engines as Professor M.S. Rao, they can find my LinkedIn. They can find me on Twitter. They can purchase my books on Amazon. All my fictive books are available on Amazon. And my message to your listeners is that advocate gender equality. Let us support women wholeheartedly so that we can build a better world.
Well, we appreciate your effort. Appreciate you being here. It's one of the opportunities that I've had last year to meet people like yourself. Certainly through Thinkers 360. If you want to know a little bit more about Professor Rao, you can also go to Thinkers 360 as well. Incredibly active up there, a lot of information. But I appreciate you being here. Thank you. And I know it's late for you. Appreciate you being here. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Professor.
It's night in India, and thank you for this opportunity. But I would like to appeal the world in this forum. India is facing acute coronavirus crisis, and we supported the world. So I request the developed nations to support India, because we are having a very tough challenge because of coronavirus. So I request advanced nations to support India at this hour of crisis, so that we can emphasize humanity.
And you were one step ahead of me. I was going to say, stay safe. We're very aware of what's going on. And, hopefully you will recover as we are all now.
Professor Rao shared with me that he is not even living in the same space as his wife in India, just so that they can stay safe.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stay safe, please.
Thank you,
Thank
Professor.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Our global international show, and it just shows the universalism of the challenges that we have.
Indeed.
It's sad. I mean, that's he's where we were a year ago, and we learned, but we didn't learn, did we? So hopefully we will learn about women in leadership.
Well, and one of the things that we really learned throughout this pandemic is that leadership can make a huge difference.
Oh, absolutely. Well, not only politically, but
yes, correct.
Look at some of the organizations and what's being done, and it's an uphill battle. I couldn't stop to think of with Romy Newman. We talked about the glass ceiling just a few weeks ago from Fairy God Boss, and she talked about the sticky floors and glass escalators.
Yes.
And Georgine Hung is going to be, who's the founder of Fairy God Boss with Romy, is going to be our guest in
next week?
A few weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah, so we'll continue that conversation. But as soon as I hear glass ceilings, I think about the
Fairy God Boss. Yeah, right.
So
right. And glass escalators, as I recall, are not even for women, right?
Well, it had to do a little bit more with diversity. Just white males have the escalator.
Right,
for sure.
Exactly. That's what I said. Yeah.
So we'll be continuing this theme, obviously, in the future, because it's incredibly important. And hopefully, we can increase that self-awareness and help people's confidence. And hopefully, we can, as with Ngomo, I love that hashtag. I wish I thought of it. Be more.
Yes.
Yes. So we thank Ngomo for being part of the show, for helping us be here. We look forward to hearing about their launch the next few weeks or months. We thank Success Performance Solution as well. We thank you, the listeners, for being part of this. And we will be back, as we always are, Wednesdays, 1 p.m. live, Geeks, Geezers, Googlization, and on all your favorite podcasts. Don't forget to sign up for the webinar coming up bit.ly/AQAI520. We'll be talking about adaptability in just a few weeks. And until next week, don't let the shift hit your plans.